The billionaire CEO hired a black nanny, unaware she was a disguised expert who would save his corporation. Wait, didn't I apply to be a household coordinator? So why am I holding an apron? Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. Elena Brooks stared at the starched white fabric dangling from the housekeeper's hand. A week ago, she was debugging firewalls and configuring cloud security. Now she stood in the grand marble foyer of the Cole mansion, wearing thrift store heels and trying to remember how to breathe. The housekeeper, a small woman with impeccable posture, smiled politely. Mr. Cole's son, Micah, needs someone. You'll assist him during meals, help with his routines, maybe light tutoring. Elena blinked. So, I'm a nanny? $50,000 a month, the woman said, as if it were pocket change. Room and board. And if you last 7 days, there's a year-end bonus 10 times that. 7 days. Elena looked down at the apron again. $50,000 a month for childcare. Either this man was generous, or his last nanny fled screaming. Still, her mother's latest medical bill flashed in her mind like a neon sign. She forced a smile. Then I guess I love kids. The housekeeper led her through a corridor so quiet her footsteps echoed off the polished stone. Every wall shimmered with minimalist art, every surface gleamed. But beneath the perfection, Elena sensed something else, the faint hum of technology. Hidden sensors tracked movement. The recessed lighting dimmed as they passed. Even the temperature adjusted 2 degrees when she entered the room. Cole Dynamics technology. She recognized the pattern, high-end, proprietary, adaptive systems. Whoever designed this network was brilliant. But the data flicker in the lights? That wasn't brilliance. That was interference. Someone's been tampering with it, she thought. The housekeeper opened a tall glass door. Mr. Cole will see you now. He was younger than she expected. Adrian Cole sat in a wheelchair beside a floor-to-ceiling window, dressed in a black suit that looked custom-tailored for command. A faint scar traced his jawline, the kind that hinted at a story no one dared ask about. His dark eyes lifted from the tablet in his hand. You're late. Elena's throat tightened. Traffic. No excuses, he said flatly, setting the tablet aside. People who make excuses don't last in this house. She exhaled slowly. Okay, so he's one of those. Noted, Mr. Cole. He studied her the way a machine scans for defects. You've worked with children before? I learned quickly. His gaze lingered a beat too long, reading between the lines. And yet you applied for a coordinator role, not a caregiver. Why accept this position? Elena's practiced answer was ready. I needed work. But in her head, she added, because no one in Silicon Valley will hire the whistleblower who exposed the fraud they all ignored. Adrian's jaw flexed. People here follow my rules. My son doesn't speak to strangers, and I don't tolerate mistakes. Before she could reply, a small boy peeked from behind a doorway. Wide brown eyes, silent curiosity. Micah. Elena's smile softened. Hi there. The boy disappeared like a ghost. Adrian's tone cooled another degree. Don't take it personally. He hasn't spoken to anyone since the accident. There it was, the unspoken tragedy the tabloids whispered about. The car crash that killed his fiancée and nearly ended his life. Elena adjusted her grip on the apron. Then I'll give him time. Time, he said quietly, is the one thing we never have enough of. He turned back toward the window, dismissing her without a word. The conversation was over before it began. By nightfall, Elena was in her new quarters, a pristine guest suite with its own kitchenette and a silent view of the ocean. The mansion's AI greeted her in a smooth digital tone. Good evening, Ms. Brooks. Would you like me to set your morning alarm? Elena froze. The voice algorithm sounded too familiar. She walked to the console and tapped the embedded panel. Lines of code flickered across the screen, fragments of syntax she could have written in her sleep. System, Cole Dynamics _AI v.9.4.2, developer signature, restricted. Her pulse quickened. You've got to be kidding me. Cole Dynamics' main AI prototype was supposed to be internal only. What was it doing running household operations? And why were there inconsistencies in its response matrix? anomalies that looked like interference. It wasn't just the lights flickering. The system was being hacked, slowly, from the inside. She leaned closer to the console, instinctively scanning for breach trails. Whoever embedded this code knew what they were doing. It reminded her too much of the same malware she'd fought months ago at Falcon Technologies, the one that got her fired for uncovering executive-level corruption. Coincidence? Or connection? Her instincts screamed the latter. The next morning, Adrian's orders came via the housekeeper. Breakfast at 8. Silence during meals. No unauthorized system adjustments. Naturally, by 8:30, she'd already broken 2 of those rules. Micah sat at the breakfast table, staring at his untouched oatmeal. The automated feeding arm, a robotic assistant designed to mimic human motions, whirred uncertainly, spoon clattering as it glitched midair. Elena crouched beside it, tapping the side port. Looks like your robot friend here needs a reboot. Micah watched silently as her fingers moved across the console, recalibrating its sensor algorithm. Within seconds, the arm moved smoothly again. See? Easy fix. The boy blinked, and for the briefest moment, smiled. Adrian entered the room just in time to see the machine working again. His eyes narrowed. Who authorized you to touch that equipment? Elena stood. It was malfunctioning. I fixed it. He stared at her, disbelief edging into irritation. You're not here to fix. You're here to follow instructions. She crossed her arms. Maybe your instructions need debugging. For a second, silence stretched thin between them. The air pulsed with the same static hum that ran through the mansion's circuits. Then, to her surprise, his expression flickered. Not anger this time, but something sharper. Interest. No one talks to me that way, he said finally. Maybe that's your problem, she replied. The corner of his mouth twitched, half amusement, half warning. Then he turned away. You won't last a week. She smiled faintly. We'll see. That night, after Micah was asleep, Elena sat by the window in her room, laptop open, connecting to the home network through an encrypted backdoor she built herself. Line by line, she traced the anomalies through the system's architecture. What she found made her stomach drop. A data relay link. Active, transmitting packets to an external IP, one registered to Cold Dynamics headquarters. Someone inside the company was using the mansion's private system as a gateway. Her eyes hardened. Whoever was doing this wasn't just stealing data. They were setting up Adrian Cole to fall. And she was sitting in the middle of his battlefield, wearing an apron. Before she ever stepped into this mansion, before the world called her the Nanny, Elena Brooks had been something very different. A cyber defense architect who built security walls no one could break, until she dared to expose the people hiding behind them. The cursor blinked on Elena's laptop screen long after midnight, a silent heartbeat in the dark. Lines of code streamed across her monitor, each one whispering a secret she wasn't supposed to know. The relay link was still active, sending encrypted packets every hour from the mansion's internal system to Cold Dynamics' corporate network. She rubbed her temples, the glow from the screen painting her face in cold light. Someone was bleeding data through the house. And from the trail signatures, it wasn't some amateur hacker. It was someone with administrator clearance. Adrian Cole's clearance. Her breath caught. Either he was the one behind the leak, or someone inside his company was using his digital fingerprint to destroy him. She closed the laptop just as the hallway sensors brightened, footsteps approaching. Elena. The housekeeper's voice, polite but urgent. Mr. Cole requests your presence in the East Study. At this hour? She checked the clock. 2:43 a.m. Either he discovered her snooping or he was an insomniac tyrant. Adrian sat in his study, a glass of something amber glinting beside the tablet on his desk. The wall behind him displayed a rotating city skyline, Cold Dynamics' signature digital art installation. But tonight, the animation stuttered. The pixels glitched. Sit, he said without looking up. Elena stayed standing. If this is about bedtime stories, I'm off the clock. He looked up then, dark eyes shadowed with fatigue and something sharper. What were you doing on the 3rd floor at midnight? Her pulse spiked. He knew. I was checking the child monitor, she said smoothly. It was flickering. He leaned back, studying her. And you needed a laptop to do that? Elena forced a light laugh. You're watching me through your sensors, Mr. Cole? That's not creepy at all. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. This house records every movement, every keystroke. When someone connects unauthorized hardware, I get a notification. She crossed her arms. Then you should know I fixed one of your nanny cams. You're welcome. He stood, wheelchair motionless behind him, a rare moment of him bracing against the desk, strength visible in the tension of his arms. You touched my systems without permission. Your systems were compromised. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Adrian's head tilted slightly, interest replacing anger. Compromised how? She realized what she'd said. Too much, too soon. Forget it, she murmured. Just a glitch. He took a slow step toward her, his limp barely perceptible. You sound like someone who knows exactly what a glitch looks like. Her throat tightened. And you sound like someone who's used to people lying to him. A charged silence filled the air. Finally, he said quietly, stay away from the East Wing servers. And from my son's robotics lab. She gave him a tight smile. Understood. But as she turned to leave, he added, you won't last a week. Without looking back, she replied, you said that yesterday. By morning, the mansion was alive with quiet efficiency. Staff glided through corridors, each movement timed, rehearsed, mechanical. Elena moved among them like a misplaced note in a symphony, observant, restless, out of place. Micah sat cross-legged on the floor of his playroom, a half-assembled robot beside him. His brow was furrowed in deep concentration. Elena crouched next to him. You built this? She asked. He didn't answer, but his small hand nudged a piece toward her. A silent invitation. She smiled and picked up the circuit board. You know, if we reroute the servo motor through this connection, your robot could lift more weight. Micah's eyes flickered with interest. He handed her the screwdriver. Within minutes, they were both knee-deep in wires and laughter, the quiet kind that lives between two people who don't need words. When the robot's LED eyes finally lit up, Micah clapped once, a small, bright sound that filled the room. Elena froze. You like it? He nodded. Then, softly, almost a whisper, thank you. The voice was fragile but real. Elena blinked, stunned. The child who hadn't spoken in months had just said his first words. Adrian found them there 20 minutes later. He stood in the doorway, watching his son's small smile as the robot waddled across the floor. Something in his expression, usually cold steel, softened like a glass window fogged by breath. You built that? He asked. Elena turned. Micah did most of it. I just supervised. Adrian crouched slightly, examining the robot's structure. This programming isn't from any of our home systems. Maybe because your home systems are outdated, she said. His eyes flicked up to hers, narrowing again. You're full of surprises, Ms. Brooks. I could say the same, she murmured. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The hum of the robot filled the silence between them. Then Micah tugged at his father's sleeve, pointing to the machine. Adrian looked down, startled. Did you just... Micah smiled. Something broke open in Adrian's chest. Relief, disbelief, maybe even gratitude. But he hid it quickly, straightening his posture. Good work, he said, voice steady again. Both of you. Then, more quietly to Elena. Lunch. My office. 1 o'clock. When she arrived, his office smelled faintly of espresso and ozone, the scent of machines overheating. He gestured for her to sit. On the desk lay a series of security logs. You're the only person in this house who could have accessed these files without leaving a trace. Except me. Elena's heart thudded. What are you implying? I'm asking, he said. Why did the AI firewall register a bypass last night? She met his gaze head-on. Because your systems are being siphoned. He froze. By whom? I don't know yet. But it's coming from inside Cole Dynamics. He folded his arms. You expect me to believe a nanny uncovered a corporate breach overnight. Not a nanny, she said softly. An engineer. The words hung there, confession and challenge in one. Adrian leaned forward, eyes sharp. You worked in tech. Worked, she corrected. Past tense. He searched her face for a long moment. You're not here by coincidence, are you? I didn't even know who you were when I took this job, she said. But maybe fate did. That earned the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. I don't believe in fate. Then believe in data, she shot back. Because yours is bleeding. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked unsettled. Not angry, not cold, but thoughtful. He picked up the file on his desk, flipping through lines of code she'd never seen printed before. If you're right, he said, someone inside my company is trying to destroy me. Her voice softened. Then let me help you stop them. His gaze hardened again, the vulnerability snapping shut like a door. I don't need help from someone who lies about who they are. Elena rose slowly. You don't have to trust me, Mr. Cole. Just trust what I can do. He didn't answer. But his silence wasn't dismissal, it was calculation. That night, as Elena returned to her quarters, she couldn't shake his words. She'd seen that look before, in the boardrooms where men underestimated her, in the eyes of executives who smiled while they buried her career. But Adrian Cole wasn't like them. His doubt wasn't cruelty. It was defense. Still, it didn't matter. The breach inside Cole Dynamics was growing, and the mansion's systems were the access point. If she didn't intervene soon, his entire empire would collapse, and she'd be powerless to stop it. She set her laptop on the table and began typing, her fingers moving faster than thought. Come on, she whispered to the code. Show me who's pulling the strings. The data stream split open, revealing new lines of command she hadn't seen before. Each one signed with an encrypted user tag. Her blood ran cold when she decrypted the first few letters. M.Hale_admin. Marcus Hale, Cole Dynamics Chief Operating Officer. Adrian's best friend. Her stomach turned. She leaned back, exhaling shakily. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It had a name, a signature, a pulse. And she was the only one who could prove it. Downstairs, Adrian stood alone in the study, staring at the glitching skyline on his digital wall. He didn't know why, but for the first time in months, he couldn't shake the sound of his son's laughter, or the image of a stubborn woman who challenged him at every turn. He tapped his cane once against the floor, the sound echoing through the hall. Ms. Brooks, he muttered to himself, half amused, half bewildered. Who exactly are you? The next morning, sunlight slanted through the mansion's glass walls, catching dust motes in the air like tiny satellites. The world outside shimmered calm, but inside Elena's head, alarms blared. Marcus Hale. The name pulsed like a virus through her thoughts. She knew him, not personally, but by reputation. Hale was Cole Dynamics' golden boy, Adrian's oldest friend, the man who turned Cole's innovations into billion-dollar profits. But she also remembered whispers from her Falcon Technologies days, rumors of shell corporations, stolen patents, disappearing engineers. And now his digital fingerprint was all over the breach. Elena closed her laptop as footsteps approached. The housekeeper entered, balancing a tray. Breakfast for Mr. Cole and Micah will be served in the East Garden today. He's asked that you attend. Elena raised an eyebrow. Asked or ordered? The housekeeper allowed a thin smile. With Mr. Cole, there's rarely a difference. Adrian Cole waited at the long stone table overlooking the manicured gardens. The ocean stretched beyond, endless and indifferent. He didn't look up when Elena arrived, though she noticed his coffee cup was already empty. The man didn't sleep, apparently, just recharged between battles. Micah tells me you helped him build another robot, he said without preamble. Elena poured herself a glass of orange juice. He helped me, actually. He's got a sharp mind. Clearly, Adrian replied. He hasn't spoken to anyone in 6 months. Then suddenly, after you show up, he talks. Guess I have that effect on people, she said lightly. His gaze flicked up, sharp, appraising. I'll admit, you're unexpected. Translation, I don't fit the uniform? Translation, he said, I don't understand you. Yet. She smiled faintly. Then maybe you should ask better questions. Micah giggled, a small, stifled sound, and the tension broke like a pinpricking glass. Adrian's lips almost curved. Almost. But then his phone vibrated, flashing a headline across the screen. Cole Dynamics stocks fluctuate amid internal security concerns. He set the phone down carefully, but Elena saw the tightness in his jaw. Something wrong? She asked. Nothing I can't handle, he said. But the way his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee told a different story. Later that afternoon, Elena wandered into the East Wing, the one Adrian had specifically told her to avoid. The air here felt different, cooler, humming with invisible energy. Rows of glass panels hid the private server vault that connected the mansion's AI to Cold Dynamics mainframe. She hesitated. Every instinct screamed stay out. Then she thought of her mother's frail smile from their last hospital call, and of Micah's first word, fragile and hopeful. If she could save this system, she could save them both. She placed her palm against the biometric panel. It blinked red, then blue, her fingerprint now authorized, courtesy of a backdoor she'd slipped into the mansion's security the previous night. Inside, the air smelled of metal and ozone. Blue lights danced across server racks. She connected her portable drive, eyes narrowing as the data scrolled. There it was again, m.hale_admin, siphoning packets through encrypted tunnels, disguised as maintenance checks. The man was routing corporate secrets through Adrian's home network, a perfect crime. If the breach ever surfaced publicly, it would look like Adrian himself had orchestrated it. Her stomach turned. She began writing code, a silent countermeasure, a digital tripwire that would trace the next data leak directly to Hale's signature. "Not so fast," she whispered, fingers flying. "You're not burying another company under your greed." She was halfway through the trace when a deep voice broke the silence behind her. "Do I even want to know what you're doing?" Elena spun. Adrian stood in the doorway, one hand braced on his cane, the other holding a tablet. She swallowed. "You really should lock this place better." His eyes narrowed. "I did. You bypassed it. I told you your systems were compromised. You told me you were a nanny. Maybe I'm good at multitasking." He stepped closer, studying the lines of code reflected on her screen. "What's this?" "A security patch," she said carefully, "to track whoever's using your home network as a corporate backdoor." He frowned. "You're accusing someone of stealing from me?" "I'm saying it's already happening." Adrian's jaw tensed. He didn't trust her, but curiosity flickered in his eyes again, that reluctant respect he tried to hide. "You think you can stop it?" he asked. "I know I can." For a long moment, he simply watched her, then turned toward the door. "You have until morning. If you're wrong, you're gone." Elena nodded once. "Fair." As he left, she couldn't help noticing the slight limp in his stride, a man rebuilding himself one painful step at a time. Hours later, thunder rolled across the coastline, lightning flashing in the distance. Elena's code tracker pulsed on screen, chasing Hale's encrypted trail. Every time she thought she'd found the end of the thread, it branched into another tunnel. Whoever Marcus Hale had working for him wasn't just skilled, they were ruthless. Her terminal beeped. "Alert! New intrusion detected. Source: Cold Dynamics HQ." She launched the trace, heart pounding. The signal was coming from the company's internal R&D cloud, directly linked to Adrian's personal projects. Someone was stealing prototype schematics right now. Elena's fingers blurred across the keys. Not tonight. She rerouted the signal through her decoy server, masking the mansion's IP, forcing the hackers' trace back onto themselves. The digital tug-of-war intensified, sparks of code colliding like gunfire. Then, suddenly, silence. Trace complete. Origin confirmed. m.hale_admin. Got you. She smiled grimly, saving the proof. Then the lights in her room flickered once, twice, and went out. Her heart stopped. System override detected, the AI's smooth voice intoned. Security lockdown initiated. Elena stood, every muscle tight. Someone else was in the network, fighting back. Her laptop screen went black. Message received, stop digging. The words flashed for half a second before vanishing. The next morning, Adrian's fury filled the air like static. "Every system in this house rebooted last night," he said, pacing his office. "Cameras, alarms, even the elevator control. Care to explain why?" Elena crossed her arms. "Because someone didn't like me finding them." "You think someone's inside my company, trying to destroy me?" "I don't think," she said evenly. "I know." He slammed a hand on the desk. "Then prove it." She met his gaze. "Give me access to your corporate servers." "That's not happening." "Then watch your empire burn." The air between them crackled. She saw it in his eyes, the struggle between pride and desperation. Finally, he exhaled. You have 24 hours. Do whatever you need to do. If you're wrong, I'll walk out by myself. That evening, as she set Micah's dinner on the table, the boy looked up and whispered, You're leaving? Elena froze. Who told you that? He shrugged. I heard Daddy. She knelt beside him. I'm not leaving. Not until the bad code is gone. Micah frowned. Code? She smiled softly. Something that's trying to hurt your dad's company. But don't worry, I'm fixing it. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small screw. For fixing things. The simple gesture almost broke her composure. Thanks, kid, she whispered. I'll need it. Later, in her room, Elena stared out at the storm-tossed ocean. Somewhere in the darkness, Hale's network pulsed, leaching power from Cold Dynamics' core. Tomorrow, she'd go deeper, into the company's servers, into Adrian's secrets, into the line between protector and intruder. And if she failed, she wouldn't just lose her job. She'd lose the one chance she had to make things right. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Thunder rolled over the mansion like the echo of old grief, and the air carried the scent of wet earth and static. Inside, silence stretched, thick and restless, broken only by the rhythmic tapping of keys as Elena sat hunched over her laptop in the corner of the library. She had less than 12 hours left on Adrian's deadline. One misstep, and she'd be out, job gone, access gone, her mother's treatment gone. But for now, all she could think about was Micah. He hadn't come down for breakfast. Again, when she asked the housekeeper, she got a polite, Mr. Cole prefers not to force him. Elena frowned. Maybe that's the problem. She found the boy upstairs, sitting cross-legged on his floor, surrounded by half-assembled robot parts. The walls were lined with blueprints, tiny, crumpled drawings of circuits and limbs. His small hands worked with a precision that made her breath catch. Hey, engineer, she said softly. You planning to build an army in here? Micah didn't answer. He just kept turning a small gear between his fingers, eyes fixed somewhere distant. Elena crouched beside him, careful not to intrude. You know, she said, most people your age are into soccer or video games. Robots are advanced. Still no reply. She reached for a screwdriver, twisting a loose bolt on the nearest robot. When I was your age, I tried to make one that could do my homework. It caught fire. Micah's lips twitched, just barely. Encouraged, she continued. I called him Derek the Disastrous. He was my first failed invention. But my mom said every failure is data. You keep the data, you lose the fear. Micah's gaze flicked toward her, curious. She smiled. What about you? What's this one's name? He hesitated. Then, so softly she almost missed it, Eli. Elena froze, her heart lifting at the sound of his voice, the first word he'd spoken since she arrived. That's a good name, she said gently. Eli sounds like someone who saves the day. Micah nodded once. From the hallway, Adrian watched them. He hadn't meant to stop, just passing by on his way to the study, but something in the sound of his son's voice rooted him to the floor. For months, Micah had lived in silence. Therapists, specialists, tutors, nothing worked. And yet here he was, talking to a woman he'd known less than a week. Adrian's chest tightened, a foreign ache pushing through the armor he'd spent years building. Elena looked up then, catching him in the doorway. You're eavesdropping, Mr. Cole. He straightened, adjusting his cuff. I was observing. Same difference, she said. Not quite. Observation requires analysis. She arched a brow. And what's your analysis? That you're remarkably persistent for a nanny. Elena smirked. Or maybe I'm just good at my job. Most nannies quit by day 3. Maybe you've been hiring the wrong kind of people. He blinked, caught off guard by her confidence. And for the first time, something almost like amusement flickered across his face. Carry on, Ms. Brooks, he said, turning to leave. But his voice softened at the edges. And thank you. That night, Elena sat in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed, her laptop glowing faint blue against the dark marble. She wasn't just tracing data now. She was building a new kind of defense, an invisible firewall that could protect the Cole mansion from future intrusions. Adrian appeared in the doorway, barefoot, shirt sleeves rolled up, a glass of scotch in hand. "Do you ever sleep?" he asked. "Not when there's work to do." He leaned against the counter, watching her fingers move. "You know, most people would kill for a night off in this house." "I'm not most people." He smiled faintly. "So I've noticed." Elena glanced at him, noting the shadows under his eyes, the stiffness in his posture. "You're still recovering from the accident, aren't you?" His expression darkened. "That's not something I discuss." "Maybe you should." He set the glass down with a soft clink. "I lost my fiancée in that crash, Ms. Brooks. My son lost his mother. Some things don't need discussing." The air between them grew heavy. Elena closed her laptop. "You think shutting everyone out will protect you, but it's killing you both. Spare me the therapy." She stood, meeting his gaze. "I'm not your therapist. I'm the woman trying to keep your kid from growing up as broken as you are." His eyes flared. Anger, disbelief, but beneath it, a spark of something else, truth. No one had ever spoken to him that way. "Go to bed," he said finally, his voice quiet but rough. "Before I remember I can fire you." She smiled faintly. "You won't. Don't test me." "Too late." He exhaled sharply, but as she walked past him, she caught the faintest sound, a chuckle, low and reluctant, like a man rediscovering something he'd forgotten how to do. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the glass corridors again. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean. Micah ran to her, holding up a small circuit board. "Look, Eli works." Elena crouched, watching as the robot flickered to life, its digital eyes blinking. It wobbled forward, emitting a cheerful beep. Adrian entered just in time to see his son laugh, full and unguarded. The sound hit him harder than any business victory ever had. He turned to Elena. "How did you do it?" "Magic," she said with a grin. "And maybe a bit of code." He studied her for a long moment. "You've managed what experts couldn't." "My son's smiling again." She shrugged. Maybe he just needed someone who didn't give up. Adrian's expression softened. For a moment, they stood in quiet understanding. Two people bound not by circumstance, but by the fragile bridge of hope built through a child's laughter. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, his expression darkening. "From Marcus Hale," meeting moved up. "Need your signature on the R&D transfer papers." Adrian pocketed the phone, his composure returning like armor snapping back into place. "Duty calls. Is that what you call it?" Elena asked. He gave her a measured look. "In my world, yes. In mine," she replied, "it's called distraction." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Be careful, Ms. Brooks. You're getting close to lines you shouldn't cross." She smiled, unbothered. "Funny. I thought that's where all the good work happens." He left without another word, but something in his stride had changed. The tension between them was no longer purely adversarial. It was magnetic, dangerous, alive. That night, after Micah went to bed, Elena opened her laptop to check the Cold Dynamics network one last time. Her digital tripwire had caught something, a new transmission originating from Adrian's office. Her pulse quickened. Someone was still inside. She activated the trace. The signal routed straight to Marcus Hale's private terminal. Elena's breath hitched. He's still in the system. She saved the data and leaned back, her reflection flickering on the dark screen. Adrian Cole thought his biggest threat was the ghosts of his past. He had no idea it was sitting at his right hand. The invitation arrived in a black envelope sealed with the Cold Dynamics crest, minimalist, heavy, and expensive enough to buy someone's rent for a month. Elena turned it over in her hands, confused. A gala. Adrian stood across from her in the foyer, dressed in a black tuxedo that looked custom-built for intimidation. "The annual shareholders' banquet," he said. "You'll accompany Micah." She blinked. "Me? As in the nanny?" He adjusted his cufflinks, avoiding her gaze. "Micah refuses to attend without you. It's not negotiable." Elena's lips twitched. "And here I thought billionaires didn't take orders from 6-year-olds. "I make exceptions," Adrian said quietly. She studied him, the faint tension around his eyes, the subtle stiffness in his shoulder. He was nervous, though he'd die before admitting it. "What kind of event is this?" she asked. "Formal. Ruthless. Try not to bite anyone." She smirked. "No promises." That night, the ballroom glittered like a diamond cage. Crystal chandeliers rained light over gold-trimmed tables, and the city skyline burned beyond the glass walls. Every conversation hummed with money and menace. Elena felt out of place the second she stepped in. Her simple black gown hugged her frame elegantly, but the stare she drew said it all. Who let the help in? She tried to ignore it, staying close to Micah, who clung to her hand. Whispers trailed behind them like perfume. Is that the nanny? Adrian brought her here? How quaint. Perhaps it's charity night. Elena's spine stiffened, but she kept her chin high. She'd faced corporate wolves before. These were just in nicer suits. Then Marcus Hale appeared. Tall, sleek, confidence radiating like a tailored weapon. His grin was smooth as glass when he approached Adrian. Cole, he said, clasping his friend's hand. You look alive for once. I've had new motivation lately, Adrian replied, glancing briefly at Elena. Marcus's eyes followed the look and landed on her. His smile sharpened. And this must be the reason. The infamous nanny. Elena met his gaze, unflinching. Infamous already? That was fast. Marcus chuckled. You'll find things move quickly in our world. Especially careers. Adrian frowned. Enough, Marcus. Of course, Hale said smoothly. Wouldn't want to make the help uncomfortable. Elena's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, Adrian's assistant hurried over. Sir, we're ready for your keynote. Adrian nodded. Stay with Micah, he told Elena. This won't take long. The presentation began flawlessly. Adrian took the stage, the massive LED screens behind him blooming with visuals of Cole Dynamics' upcoming AI initiative. Investors leaned forward, journalists scribbled notes. But halfway through the demo, the screens flickered, the lights dimmed, and then chaos. Lines of code flashed across the massive display. Internal files, payroll data, proprietary algorithms, all spilling out in real time for the world to see. Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked. Phones raised. Adrian froze. Shut it down, he barked to his tech team. But the systems weren't responding. The virus had hijacked the entire network. Elena's pulse spiked. She recognized the digital signature immediately. Hale's malware, reactivated through the same breach she traced. She turned to Micah. Stay with the guard. Don't move. Before anyone could stop her, she slipped off her heels and darted toward the backstage corridor. The server room buzzed with emergency lights and static. Elena ripped open a panel, plugging her portable drive into the main terminal. Lines of hostile code swarmed the system, multiplying faster than the engineers could counter it. She inhaled sharply. Not today. Her fingers flew, overriding the firewall, launching counter scripts she'd written in secret. Each keystroke was a battle, malicious packets detonating across the network, servers overheating, alarms blaring. She rerouted power manually, forcing the AI back into a secure sandbox. The lights flickered, the virus screamed through the console, and then silence. The screens in the ballroom went black. Then the Cole Dynamics logo reappeared, stable and clean. Applause didn't come immediately, just stunned, collective exhalation. When Adrian stormed backstage moments later, he found Elena standing amid the blinking servers, hair falling loose, eyes bright with adrenaline. What the hell did you just do? He demanded. Stopped your company from imploding, she said simply. He stepped closer, incredulous. You handled a live breach? Alone? She tilted her chin. Someone had to. He stared at her, torn between fury and awe. Who are you? Her answer was calm, deliberate. Someone you should have hired years ago. For a long moment, neither spoke. The low hum of the servers filled the silence between them. Finally, Adrian exhaled, a sound that was almost disbelief. You realize what you've done? Every major network in the city just saw Cole Dynamics humiliated, then saved by my nanny. Elena met his gaze steadily. Then maybe they'll realize your company's problems run deeper than bad press. He flinched, not from her words, but from their accuracy. Later, back in the ballroom, reporters swarmed. Adrian's PR team scrambled to spin the story as a minor glitch, but the rumors were already flying. Marcus Hale reappeared, drink in hand, face a mask of sympathy. Tough night, Cole. Lucky for you. Your new hire's quite the multitasker. Adrian's eyes narrowed. You knew? Knew what? Marcus said smoothly. That your systems were compromised? That your company's bleeding from the inside? He smiled faintly. You can't blame a man for preparing for the future. Elena stepped forward before Adrian could respond. You mean the future where you steal his technology and sell it under one of your shell firms? Marcus's composure flickered, just for a second. Careful, Miss Brooks. You're a guest here. Not for long, she said. Once Adrian sees the proof on this drive, you'll be the guest of the federal government. Adrian's gaze darted between them. Proof? Elena nodded. Everything I traced, it leads back to him. Marcus laughed softly, regaining his composure. You really should vet your staff better, Cole. For all you know, she's the one who caused the breach. Adrian hesitated. The room swam with noise, with flashing cameras and murmured accusations. For the first time, doubt clouded his eyes. Elena, he began. She looked at him, hurt cutting deep beneath her calm exterior. You think I'd risk everything to save your company just to destroy it? He didn't answer. Marcus smirked, sensing the fracture. I'll handle this quietly, he told Adrian. Let security escort her out. Elena's throat tightened. She could see it. The walls closing in, the trust she'd built turning to smoke. But she lifted her chin. The person you trust most, she said softly, is the one destroying you. And then she turned and walked out. Outside, the city wind hit her like a slap, cold, unrelenting. She stood beneath the rain-slick awning, watching the glittering tower of Cole Dynamics reflected in a puddle at her feet. Inside that glass empire, she'd just saved a man who couldn't decide if she was his savior or his threat. She was both, she realized, and the war had only just begun. The morning after the gala, the mansion felt different. Too quiet, too still, like the air was holding its breath. Elena woke to the sound of muted voices downstairs, sharp, low, controlled. The kind of conversation where truth and danger shared the same table. She dressed quickly, heart already tight in her chest. Something was wrong. When she entered the study, Adrian was standing by the window, his back to her. Marcus Hale sat in one of the leather chairs, flipping through a folder. Between them, on the desk, lay a single flash drive. Her flash drive. Her stomach dropped. Marcus looked up first. The prodigy arrives. Adrian didn't turn. Sit down, Elena. His tone wasn't angry. It was worse, cold. She obeyed, her pulse hammering in her ears. Marcus clicked his pen and held up a document. I took the liberty of running a little forensic check on your so-called evidence. And guess what we found? He slid the pages toward her. Logs, code traces, signatures, every one of them tied to her device. Adrian spoke without looking at her. Tell me it isn't true. Elena stared at the documents. The digital signatures were hers, yes, but altered, rewritten in subtle, deliberate ways. It was a frame job so clean, even she almost believed it. This isn't my work, she said quietly. Someone modified my logs. Marcus gave a dry laugh. Of course. The mysterious nanny hacker, wrongly accused. Very Hollywood. Adrian finally turned, his eyes unreadable. You expect me to believe that someone else used your encryption key to access my system? I'm telling you, Marcus planted this. Careful. Marcus cut in, voice smooth as oil. That's slander. Elena rose, unable to sit still. You think I haven't seen your fingerprints all over the malware, Marcus? You used my breach patch to redirect blame. Prove it. The words hit like a gauntlet. She looked at Adrian, searching his face for something. A flicker of belief, of understanding. But all she found was exhaustion. I trusted you, he said softly. I let you into my home, into my son's life. I saved both of you. Did you? His voice cracked, just slightly. Or did you save yourself? Silence filled the space between them. Then, without looking at her again, he said, Security will escort you off the premises. It took a second for the words to register. You're firing me? She whispered. He didn't answer. Marcus stood, adjusting his jacket. I'll see that the matter is handled discreetly. We wouldn't want the press finding out the CEO's nanny was an infiltrator. Elena turned to Adrian one last time. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty, he said. I won't make another. Her chest ached. The person you trust most is the one destroying you. Then she walked out before he could see the tears forming in her eyes. The rain returned as the black car rolled down the mansion's drive. Elena sat in the back seat, staring out the window. The estate blurred into gray shapes: glass, steel, memory. When she reached the main gate, she looked back once. Micah stood at the window of the second floor, a small silhouette against the storm. He lifted a hand, pressing it to the glass. Elena smiled weakly, doing the same. Then the car turned, and he was gone. Hours later, Adrian sat in his office, the room lit only by the glow of his computer screen. Marcus had left, claiming he'd contained the fallout. But something gnawed at him. He replayed the security footage from the gala's backstage feed, Elena typing furiously at the terminal, the system stabilizing under her hands. She hadn't looked like a saboteur. She'd looked like someone saving a life. His phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. Handled the situation. Focus on damage control. Trust me. Adrian set the phone down, but the words rang hollow. Trust me. He poured himself a drink, but didn't touch it. Instead, he opened the system logs again, scanning line after line of code. He wasn't a coder, not anymore, but he knew enough to see one strange thing. In the metadata of the recovered file was a note. Barely visible. Patch _7.1 by EB. He frowned. Elena Brooks. She'd tagged her repair script, the same one she'd used to stop the attack. It didn't match the malware Marcus had shown him earlier. His pulse quickened. If she didn't write the virus, then who did? He hit the intercom. Get me the internal forensics report. All of it. Now. Meanwhile, in a tiny apartment across town, Elena sat cross-legged on her bed, her laptop open to a blank terminal. She was locked out of Cold Dynamics system, her credentials wiped. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The betrayal still burned. Not just Adrian's mistrust, but Marcus's smug satisfaction. She'd seen that look before. The arrogance of powerful men convinced no one could outsmart them. She'd made that mistake once at Falcon Technologies. She wouldn't make it again. Let's see what you're hiding, Marcus Hale, she murmured. She began building a new tool, something small, stealthy, invisible to corporate firewalls. If she could trace the data Marcus had stolen, she could expose him. But first, she'd need access. And there was only one man who could give her that. Adrian Cole. 2 days later, the fallout began. Cold Dynamics stock plummeted. Confidential project data surfaced online. Investors demanded answers. Adrian's board turned on him in private calls and leaked memos. And Marcus Hale, ever the loyal friend, publicly offered to temporarily assume operational duties until the situation stabilized. Adrian refused, but he was losing control. Every hour brought another crisis. Then one morning, a package arrived at his desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a single flash drive. He stared at it for a long time before plugging it in. The screen filled with cascading code, familiar, clean, efficient. His breath caught when he saw the final line. Patch _7.1 by the Nanny. A message followed, embedded in the code comments. You were right. I lied about who I was. But you were wrong about why. I didn't come to destroy you. I came to stop the man who is. Adrian leaned back, exhaling slowly. The pieces began to align. The sabotage, the timing, Marcus's eagerness to blame her. He'd fired the wrong person. That night, Adrian sat alone in the darkened mansion. Micah had gone to bed hours ago. The house was quiet, too quiet. He looked at the empty chair across from him, where Elena used to sit with her laptop, a faint hum of typing filling the silence. For the first time, he realized how much the house had changed since she left. How much he had changed. He'd built walls to protect himself from loss. And now, those same walls had driven away the only person who'd truly seen through them. He picked up the flash drive again, gripping it like a lifeline. I was wrong, he whispered into the dark. Across the city, Elena's computer screen glowed as she traced another data leak. Each thread led to one name, Marcus Hale, and through him, a network of shell accounts, hidden payments, and encrypted deals. She smiled grimly. Got you. The fight wasn't over. It was just getting personal. Rain lashed against the glass walls of Cold Dynamics headquarters, a steel fortress that now felt more like a sinking ship. Adrian Cole stood at the top floor, staring down at the city that used to belong to him. The skyline blinked with his company's dying lights. Branch offices shutting down one by one, networks failing, systems hijacked. The empire he'd built was collapsing. 3 days. That's all it had taken. The cyber attacks had spread from internal servers to global networks. Every hour, new leaks surfaced, patents, research blueprints, confidential mergers. It was a bloodbath, and the world was watching. Financial analysts called it the Cole implosion. Tech outlets wrote that Adrian had lost control of his own creation. His phone rang without pause, board members demanding explanations, lawyers scrambling for containment. Every voice bled into another until it became white noise. When the last call ended, he was left alone in silence. He stared at the massive Cole Dynamics logo behind his desk, a symbol once synonymous with power and innovation. Now, it was just a ghost. Marcus Hale stepped into the office, his usual calm replaced by something colder. "Adrian," he said smoothly, closing the door. "You can't keep stalling the board. They're calling for a vote of no confidence." Adrian didn't look up. "You mean you're calling for it?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Let's not make this personal. You're exhausted, emotionally compromised. Let me take the reins for a while. We can save what's left." Adrian finally turned. Save it? Or finish bleeding it dry? For a heartbeat, something flickered in Marcus's expression, arrogance, exposed too soon. "I built this company," Adrian said, voice low. "From the ground up. Every server, every code line, every deal. And now you want to strip it for parts." Marcus shrugged. "Business is survival. You taught me that." Adrian rose from his chair, the air tightening. "I also taught you loyalty." Marcus's smile vanished. "Then maybe you should have chosen better people to trust." The words hit like a confession wrapped in poison. Adrian's jaw clenched. He reached into his drawer and pulled out the flash drive, the one that had arrived that morning. He held it up. "You recognize this?" Marcus's eyes flicked toward it, just a second too long. "No. Should I?" "It came from someone you framed," Adrian said evenly. "She sent a patch that stabilized what's left of our network. Saved us from total shutdown." Marcus chuckled, but there was tension now. "You're seriously still clinging to her? The woman who infiltrated your house?" "She didn't infiltrate anything," Adrian said, his voice hardening. "You did." The silence that followed was volcanic. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Be careful, Adrian. Accusing your COO without evidence won't end well. For anyone." Then he turned and walked out, his calm steps echoing through the corridor like a warning. Adrian sank back into his chair. His pulse was steady, but his thoughts were chaos. He knew Marcus was behind the sabotage. Elena had been right all along. He doubted her, driven her away. And now, he was paying the price. That evening, back at the mansion, the storm raged harder. Micah hadn't spoken in 2 days. Adrian found him sitting in the living room beside the robot Elena had built. Its lights were dim, battery dead. He crouched beside his son. "You miss her, don't you?" Micah didn't answer, but his fingers traced the robot's faceplate gently, as if touching a memory. Adrian sighed. "So do I." He didn't expect an answer. But then, softly, Micah whispered, "She said robots don't stop working. People just stop believing in them." Adrian froze. It was the first time his son had spoken since the day she left. He swallowed hard. She was right. Micah turned to him, eyes wide with something like hope. "Will she come back?" Adrian hesitated. "I don't know." But deep down, he made a silent promise. "I'll bring her back. Somehow." The next morning, he gathered his most trusted engineers, the few who hadn't defected, and locked them in the secure lab. He projected the company's internal network on the wall, nodes flickering red, connections severed. "Find the origin," he ordered. "Every breach, every packet trace. I want names." For hours, the room buzzed with frantic energy. Then, around noon, one of the engineers looked up, pale. "Sir, you need to see this." She zoomed in on the data map, a cluster of signals rerouting through offshore servers. The endpoint wasn't random. It was linked directly to a hidden account under the alias MH Innovations. Marcus Hale. Adrian's chest tightened. He whispered, almost to himself, "You really did it." The engineer hesitated. What do we do? Adrian's voice hardened. We fight back. He opened the flash drive again and executed the script Elena had left behind. Lines of code cascaded like light, purging infected sectors, isolating malicious nodes. It wasn't perfect, but it was powerful, elegant, even. It bought them time. As the system stabilized, Adrian felt something he hadn't in days: resolve. He turned to his team. We rebuild. And when this is over, Marcus Hale answers for everything. Across the city, Elena sat in her small apartment, eyes locked on her monitor. She'd been tracing Marcus's offshore movements for days, watching as money shifted into ghost companies. Now she saw something new. The Coal Dynamics mainframe was stabilizing. Someone inside was using her patch. Adrian. A faint smile crossed her face. So you finally listened. She leaned back, exhaustion softening her features. She didn't hate him. Not anymore. He'd been blind. Yes, but not cruel. Just broken in ways the world expected men like him to be. She'd seen the guilt in his eyes when he fired her. The kind of pain that comes from realizing too late who your allies really are. And despite everything, she wanted him to win. She wanted them to win. At midnight, Adrian sat alone in the conference room, the lights of the city spilling through the glass. He replayed Elena's message from the flash drive, her calm, steady voice embedded in the code. You were wrong about me, but it's not too late to fix this. Marcus isn't after your company. He's after control of the AI you built. Stop him before it stops you. Her words cut deep, not just as a warning, but as faith. She still believed he could fix it. He opened his laptop, staring at the network logs. Marcus's next move was clear: full takeover. If Adrian didn't act, Coal Dynamics would be stripped apart by morning. He leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. You were right, Elena, he murmured. Maybe I did need better rules and better people. The path ahead was clear now. But to follow it, he'd have to do the one thing he'd never done before: ask for help. By dawn, the first light broke over the horizon, pale and uncertain. Adrian opened a new secure message and began typing. To Elena Brooks, subject: I was wrong. Message: the company's under siege. You were right about Marcus. I need you. No disguises. No lies. Just you. Adrian. He hesitated for a moment, then hit send. As the email vanished into the encrypted network, he exhaled slowly. The die was cast. Whether she forgave him or not, she deserved to know the truth and the chance to finish what she started. Outside, the city began to stir. The storm was passing. But for Adrian Cole, the real reckoning was just beginning. The workshop in South Atlanta smelled of solder, metal dust, and quiet resilience. Rows of half-assembled robots lined the tables, some shaped like toys, others like small helpers, built from scavenged parts. A poster on the far wall read, "Tech for every kid." Elena Brooks sat at her workbench, a pair of magnifying glasses perched on her head, fixing the servo motor of a child's prosthetic arm. She hadn't slept in 20 hours. The city outside hummed with the rhythm of survival. Her world had shrunk to this small room. For walls, a soldering iron, and silence. Then the bell over the door rang. She looked up, frowning. The workshop rarely had visitors at this hour. A tall figure stepped inside, rain clinging to his coat. He looked wildly out of place among the cluttered shelves and scattered wires. Adrian Cole. Elena froze, the soldering iron trembling slightly in her hand. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the steady drip of rainwater from his coat filled the air. Finally, she set the tool down. You shouldn't be here. I know, he said quietly. But I had to be. Her eyes narrowed. To what? Fire me again? In person this time? He exhaled, the weight of his guilt hanging visibly on his shoulders. To say I was wrong. She almost laughed, but it came out brittle. That's a big word coming from a billionaire. I deserve that, he said simply. But I read your code, Elena. The patch. The message. You tried to protect the company, even after I threw you out. She turned away, trying to keep her voice steady. I didn't do it for you, Adrian. I did it because Marcus was using your systems to steal from people who trusted him. I couldn't watch that happen again. He stepped closer, cautious, as though approaching something fragile. You were right about him. We traced the entire breach. Offshore accounts, dummy corporations. He's been bleeding coal dynamics for years. Elena's lips tightened. And now you believe me. I should have believed you from the start. His voice cracked slightly. I let my past cloud everything. My trust. My judgment. You didn't deserve that. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The hum of machines filled the gap. Mike has been asking about you, he said softly. He fixed the robot you built. Said it didn't feel right until he did. Elena blinked back the sting behind her eyes. He's a good kid. Smarter than both of us. Adrian smiled faintly. He gets that from you. The quiet that followed wasn't hostile anymore. It was full of ghosts and possibilities. Finally, he said, I need your help. Not as a nanny. Not as someone in disguise. As the expert you are. Her head lifted slowly. What kind of help? Marcus has gone underground. He's trying to take full control of the AI infrastructure. If he succeeds, he won't just destroy the company. He'll have access to thousands of private systems around the world. Government contracts, defense networks, everything. Elena's eyes sharpened. And you want me to stop him? I can't do it without you, he admitted. You're the only one who understands the code enough to counter him. The team trusts your work, even if they don't know it's yours. She studied him for a long moment, the edges of her anger softening under something older, deeper. You don't need a nanny this time, Mr. Cole. He met her gaze steadily. No, I need my savior. For a moment, Elena said nothing. She just stared at him, at the exhaustion under his eyes, the sincerity he wasn't used to showing. She thought of all the nights she'd spent alone, hiding her brilliance behind humility just to survive. And here he was, a man born into power, finally learning the humility she'd carried all her life. Why now? She asked quietly. Why risk coming here when your entire board is turning against you? He hesitated, then said, because none of it matters if I can't look my son in the eye and tell him I fixed what I broke. That hit harder than he probably meant it to. Elena looked away, swallowing hard. You still might lose everything. Then I'll lose it standing next to the one person who's never lied to me about who I am. Her heart squeezed. For all his arrogance, Adrian Cole finally sounded human. She turned back to her desk, grabbing her laptop. If I help, we do it my way. No board interference, no PR stunts. Just the truth and the code. Agreed. And if you try to pull rank, he lifted his hands. You can fire me. She arched an eyebrow. Tempting. For the first time in weeks, a real smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. They spent the next few hours huddled over her screens. Elena pulled up network maps, while Adrian forwarded encrypted access keys. Together, they traced Marcus's digital footprints across the web, thousands of small breaches converging into one massive data sinkhole. He's building a ghost system, she muttered, eyes flicking across lines of code. A backdoor AI that can manipulate your corporate architecture remotely. If it activates, Cole Dynamics becomes his puppet. Adrian's jaw tightened. How do we stop it? She typed furiously, her fingers a blur. We don't stop it, we rewrite it. Feed it its own logic until it eats itself alive. He watched her work, half in awe, half in shame. You make it look easy. It isn't, she said without looking up. It's war. Just digital. Minutes bled into hours. Adrian fetched coffee, rechecked data links, followed her instructions like a soldier following orders. For once, he didn't command, he assisted. When the final line of code executed, Elena sat back, exhaling. Done. What happens now? He asked. She looked at the progress bar on the screen. 95%, 96%, 97%. Now we wait. If it holds, Marcus's system will collapse before dawn. Adrian leaned against the workbench, studying her in the dim light. You know, he said softly, you could walk away right now. Start your own company. You don't owe me this. She met his gaze steadily. Maybe I'm not doing it for you. He smiled faintly. Micah, maybe, she said. Maybe for the version of me who thought being honest would end her career. Or for every woman who was told to stay quiet so men like Marcus could win. Adrian nodded, his expression heavy with respect. Then let's make sure they don't win this time. When the progress bar hit 100%, the system beeped softly. A cascade of red warnings turned green. Elena's eyes widened. It worked. Adrian looked at the screen, disbelief flickering across his face. You did it. No, she said quietly. We did it. They sat there for a long moment, the adrenaline giving way to quiet relief. Outside, the rain had stopped. Finally, Adrian straightened. Come back with me. Lead the cybersecurity division. Name your conditions. No disguises, no aprons, just you. Elena hesitated, the weight of everything between them pressing down. You really think the board will let you hire the nanny you fired? They'll have to, he said, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Because this time, she's the one saving their empire. For the first time, Elena let herself laugh. It was soft, but real, the sound of something broken starting to mend. She powered down her laptop and stood, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. All right, Mr. Cole, but let's get one thing clear. He tilted his head. What's that? I'm not coming back as your employee. No. She stepped closer, meeting his eyes. I'm coming back as your equal. He held her gaze for a heartbeat, then nodded slowly. Then it's a deal. As they walked out into the night, the city lights flickered in the puddles at their feet. The storm was gone, but the air still smelled like change. Adrian glanced at her, a small, genuine smile breaking through. You once said I needed better rules. Elena smirked. Looks like you finally learned how to follow one. The world was watching. News cameras lined the grand atrium of Cole Dynamics headquarters, broadcasting live across networks. The company that had nearly collapsed under scandal was about to face its reckoning. A banner hung above the stage, Cole Dynamics, rebuilding trust in technology. But the real show was about to begin. Backstage, Adrian adjusted his tie in the mirror, though he wasn't the focus of today's event. His reflection looked older, wiser, less of the cold tycoon he'd once been. He turned to the woman standing beside him, composed and radiant in a sleek navy suit. Elena Brooks. Her name tag read, Elena Brooks, Chief Systems Architect, Cyber Defense Division. For a moment, Adrian just looked at her, at the quiet confidence in her eyes, the calm power she carried like armor. You ready for this? He asked softly. She gave a small, knowing smile. I was born ready. He smiled back. Then let's make history. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. Adrian stepped onto the stage first, his voice steady over the microphone. 6 weeks ago, he began. Cole Dynamics faced its darkest hour. We were under siege, not from competitors, but from corruption within. Trust was broken, and that's on me. I take full responsibility. A murmur rippled through the crowd, reporters typing furiously, board members shifting in their seats. Adrian continued. But sometimes, when everything falls apart, the right people step forward. He turned toward the wings. One of them is the reason we're still standing today. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, please welcome the woman who saved Cole Dynamics, Elena Brooks. The applause started small, cautious, then swelled into something thunderous. Elena stepped out under the bright lights. For a heartbeat, the noise faded. She felt the weight of every eye on her, the same eyes that once would have dismissed her, underestimated her, ignored her. Not anymore. She approached the podium, her voice clear and composed. Good morning, she began. Some of you might recognize me as the former household coordinator of Mr. Cole's home. Laughter rippled through the audience. Even Adrian smiled. Yes, she said, smirking slightly, the nanny. But titles don't define truth. When I first entered Cole Dynamics, I saw more than a company. I saw brilliance on the brink of being buried by greed. I couldn't stand by and watch innovation be turned into corruption. Her tone sharpened, professional now. For months, Marcus Hale, former COO of this corporation, orchestrated a silent theft of proprietary AI systems. He created a network of offshore shell companies designed to steal intellectual property and sell it to foreign investors. Gasps erupted across the hall. Screens behind her lit up with evidence, encrypted wire transfers, falsified code signatures, and Marcus's personal access logs. Elena continued, steady and unflinching. Every line of stolen code passed through a hidden node inside our mainframe. I traced it. I verified it. And today, that same data is being turned over to federal authorities. The crowd erupted into a storm of flashbulbs and whispers. Adrian watched her with pride swelling quietly in his chest. She wasn't just brilliant, she was fearless. Elena raised her chin. Coal Dynamics is implementing a new AI ethics framework, transparent, equitable, and accountable. Because technology should never belong to the corrupt few. It should serve everyone. The applause was instant, loud, thunderous, genuine. She stepped back from the podium, her composure still intact, but her heart pounding. Across the world, headlines exploded. Coal Dynamics exposes internal espionage network. Black female engineer leads historic tech reformation. The nanny who saved the empire. After the conference, the board gathered privately in the executive lounge. For once, they were united, not in fear, but in admiration. Elena, one of the older members, said, shaking her hand, "What you did, it was nothing short of revolutionary." Another added, "You've restored faith in this company. You have our gratitude and our respect." Elena nodded politely. "Thank you. But rebuilding trust isn't a solo effort. It's a team project, one we can't afford to get wrong again." Her gaze flicked briefly toward Adrian. He inclined his head, understanding the message perfectly. Later that evening, the chaos had quieted. Elena stood alone on the terrace outside the building, overlooking the city skyline. The sunset painted everything gold, the streets, the towers, the reflection in her eyes. Adrian joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "I think congratulations are in order," he said, offering her one. She smiled faintly. "For surviving the week?" "For saving an empire," he said. "And for teaching its king a few lessons in humility." She laughed softly. "You're learning." They stood side by side, the silence between them now easy, the kind that didn't need to be filled. After a long pause, she said quietly, "Do you ever think about how it started? You hiring a nanny?" He groaned lightly. "Don't remind me. That might be the most expensive job posting in history." Elena grinned. "Worth it." He looked at her, seriously now. "More than worth it." When reporters later asked Adrian how he discovered his company's savior, he smiled faintly and said, "She wasn't in Silicon Valley. She was in my kitchen." The line went viral overnight. But behind the humor was truth, the kind you can't manufacture in press releases. Elena Brooks had walked into his life as someone beneath his notice. Now, she was the foundation of everything he was rebuilding. Weeks passed. Coal Dynamics entered a new era. The AI division, under Elena's leadership, became a global model for ethical technology. She introduced programs for women in tech, scholarships for underrepresented engineers, and coding academies for children in underserved communities. The first to enroll? Micah Cole. Every afternoon, he'd run into her office after school, showing her new projects or tweaks to the robot they'd built together. One evening, he proudly handed her a small card he'd printed himself. "To Ms. Brooks, the best teacher and the coolest hacker." Elena laughed so hard she cried. Adrian watched from the doorway, smiling quietly, grateful in a way words couldn't express. That night, as the city lights shimmered beyond the mansion's glass walls, Elena entered her office upstairs. On her screen glowed her official title, Elena Brooks, Executive Director, Cyber Defense Division. She sat back, the moment sinking in. Every fight, every loss, every disguise, it had led here. A soft knock came at the door. Adrian leaned against the frame, no longer the icy CEO, but something warmer, steadier. "You're home late, Ms. Brooks," he said with a half-smile. She didn't look up from her monitor. "Sorry, boss. Busy saving your empire again." He chuckled, stepping closer. "Then I'd better double your salary before you save someone else's." Elena turned, arching an eyebrow. "Triple it, and we'll talk." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. For a moment, they just stood there, 2 people who'd fought from opposite sides of power, now bound by respect and something deeper. The lights from the city reflected in the glass behind them, twin silhouettes cast against the skyline. Not a savior and a so anymore, but equals. Outside, the wind stirred softly through the garden. Inside, Coal Dynamics pulsed with new life. A company reborn, a family rebuilt. The storm had passed, and in its place stood something unbreakable.
I really appreciate you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.